world of The Sopranos is marked by danger.
The angel of death hovers over everyone on the show.
Fear.
He doesn't like to be out in the press, and it makes him very uncomfortable.
Tragedy.
She ended up becoming paralyzed from the waist down.
And scandal.
You got some big lessons on the price of fame. If you screw up, everyone's going to know about it.
And that's just what goes on behind the scenes. In the next 2 hours, we'll infiltrate the mob to get an inside look at TV's most notorious crime boss.
He couldn't walk 10 feet without people screaming in New York, "Tony! Oh, hey, Tony!"
And his motley crew of wise guys.
Anybody can be shot, strangled, thrown in the ocean. It takes a real man to go on the toilet.
These guys are outlaws, and there's something sexy about that.
You think you know about the real lives of these Jersey good fellas? Forget about it. This is the story of The Sopranos. The true Hollywood story. Avish.
The dream of being one of them.
For life's ambition was to be a star.
Every coverage of the public scandal.
Al Capone, Lucky Luciano, Sammy the Bull, and John Gotti. They're not your typical heroes, but gangsters have always fascinated America, and Hollywood has enjoyed a long love affair with the mob. From The Godfather to Goodfellas, crime is definitely paid on film, and paid big.
Society loves its bad boys, even though it doesn't tolerate their behavior. There's some kind of admiration or curiosity about them.
From the early days of talkies, movies about the mob's dark dealings left audiences wanting more. But television was slow to catch on. The small screen always showed the cop side of the story, until 1999 when a new kind of TV don showed up on the tube. Tony Soprano, a hitman with a heart.
Tony can be charming and lovable and cuddly and affable and then go out and, commit a heinous murder.
From its debut, The Sopranos, a drama about a New Jersey crime family, was an instant mob hit. Audiences were hooked, critics raved, and even real-life mafiosos gave the series 2 blocks up.
It has the intrigue of the mafia that people love in the mafia movies, and the kind of intrigue in the families and the business and the backstabbing and what's going on, and yet it also has a very human side to it.
Despite Tony's loyal following, the undisputed boss of The Sopranos was writer-producer David Chase.
David Chase is a Jersey guy. He grew up in Caldwell, and he started out in television on The Rockford Files, and then he was on Northern Exposure and I'll Fly Away and a few other things.
Veteran producer Stephen J. Cannell worked with Chase on The Rockford Files.
He was like kind of kicking around and writing pilots or movies that didn't get shot, and then he'd go to work for somebody else.
And eventually he started to get bored with the way TV was done, and he wanted to do something a little different. And he had an unusual relationship with his mother, and he wanted to find a way to work that into a show.
And my wife would say to me, someday you really should write about you and your mother as a character. And I thought, well, who would be interested in hearing about a New Jersey housewife? And who would be interested in hearing, a story about a TV producer and his mother? But then at some point I just got the idea that maybe if it was a mobster, it would be more commercial.
A mobster who could not handle his mother was a new twist. Film director Peter Bogdanovich was a Sopranos fan from the start.
That was sort of the beginning of The Sopranos. The idea that this kind of mother would affect a mafioso, small-time mafioso, so badly that he has to go to a psychiatrist.
The whole idea that David had for the show was to take the Godfather genre and hold it up to the light of reality. What would it really be like if if you had a family and you had all these pressures on you and you were trying to be the Godfather?
In 1996, Chase put pen to paper to write his pilot script. Tony Soprano couldn't trust his mother, his kids were driving him nuts, and the cops were trying to break up his crime family. No wonder this Godfather was having panic attacks and his shrink put him on Prozac.
David Chase shopped it around to all the networks. None of them cared about it. None of them liked it.
Nobody got it. He wrote the script, and they wanted, they wanted younger, hot Italians. They didn't want old, fat, 50-year-old guys that take Prozac, And David just was very depressed about it.
The feeling was that an actual mobster who murders people wasn't a good idea to put on the air. The violence of it would be pretty extreme for television. So he went to HBO, which was much more open to alternative scenarios.
The cable network took a chance on the edgy script. Execs bought The Sopranos pilot, but worried that viewers would think the show was about opera singers.
HBO threw around a lot of different titles before The Sopranos was accepted as it. You know, they thought maybe Family Guy, Red Sauce, other titles were thrown around. They were even thinking about Made in New Jersey.
Chase won the battle for his show title. Then, he needed to find a group of actors who could bring the mob into America's living rooms. In the spring of '97, casting began on the pilot. First priority, Tony Soprano, the mafia kingpin in the midst of a midlife crisis. The auditions attracted dozens of hopefuls, including actor David Proval, formerly of TV's Picket Fences.
They had me in for Tony Soprano. And I went and I read for David and HBO. They had called me back and I read again. And then I had heard that they really love what you did, but you're too physically on the nose. You look too right. And they were right. I mean, I don't look like the guy who lives next door.
But 35-year-old James Gandolfini did. A Rutgers University graduate, Gandolfini's accent and pedigree made him perfect for the part.
James Gandolfini is actually from New Jersey. He started out as a bouncer at a Manhattan nightclub and then turned to acting.
He got a start in theater. His stage debut was in A Streetcar Named Desire on Broadway in '92 with Alec Baldwin and Jessica Lange. You know, this was his first major TV role.
He was pretty much an unknown when Chase cast him in the part, which was a good thing because he didn't bring any baggage with him.
What Gandolfini brought was a solid interpretation of a mobster who was cracking up.
It was a brilliant choice because Gandolfini, on the face of it, is not sympathetic. Beneath all the savagery on the front, there's an understandable, albeit fractured, human being under there.
For Tony's better half, producers needed an actress who could play a brass Jersey housewife. Chase approached 42-year-old Lorraine Bracco.
They wanted to meet me for Carmela, which is Tony Soprano's wife. And I didn't want to play Carmela because I had already played Karen Hill in Goodfellas, and I felt that I couldn't really do it any better.
A native of Long Island, Bracco became a fashion cover girl at age 19 after moving to France in 1974. 10 years later, she returned to the States to give acting a shot. Bracco delivered her breakthrough performance and earned an Oscar nomination as a mafia wife in the movie Goodfellas. When David Chase came calling in 1997, Bracco set her sights on a different role.
I felt that Jennifer Melfi was a real challenge for me. This was absolutely the opposite of everything that I've ever done. And I convinced David to meet me for the doctor role.
Lorraine modeled Dr. Melfi after her own therapist.
I made her a lonely, a little repressed, a very, very bright, smart, into her work. Probably, for me, very successful in her work, not very successful in her private life.
Chase was sold, and Bracco won the job. The role of Carmela Soprano went to another Long Island native, 34-year-old Edie Falco.
She's a wife and mother in the suburbs. She's got 2 young kids, a little bit obnoxious, a husband who she loves, but she knows is always up to something, just so happens to be the mob. It's hard to play that, you know, other than just being the stereotypical big-haired, long-nailed chick.
For Falco, The Sopranos was the opportunity of a lifetime.
She's not the most glamorous, and she certainly wasn't the most experienced actress, but this is a woman who has really paid her dues.
She struggled doing various small roles, and in between that she worked as a waitress. She had, you know, sort of these lousy jobs in Manhattan where she was struggling to make it big.
The pressure caused Edie to suffer crippling panic attacks. After years of therapy, Falco got her anxiety under control, and by the mid-90s, she was landing TV roles.
She'd had small parts on Homicide, and she was a prison guard on Oz, which was a good thing because that was on HBO, and the HBO executives kept her in mind when they were casting The Sopranos.
One of the biggest challenges for David Chase was filling the part of Livia, the matriarch of the family and the character who inspired him to write The Sopranos.
David's mother's name was Livia. Coincidentally, it's the name of the Empress Livia under a couple of Caesars, actually, in the 1st century, who was quite an evil lady, poisoned most of her family. Well, and so did Livia, David Chase's character and mother.